Hello students, welcome to the answer writing program, and today we will be discussing two topics from GS1 Geography, and the topics would be, the first is important geophysical phenomena like earthquake, volcanic activities, cyclone, and the second is changes in the critical geographical features like water bodies, ice caps, flora and fauna, and the effects of such changes. So let's take an overview of all the three questions. The first question is related to the reasons behind the earthquake and why the recent Turkey earthquake was so devastated. The second question is related to the melting of thawed glaciers. The third question is about La Nina and El Nino and how one is welcomed in India and the second one triggers anxiety in India. So what are the various reasons behind that and what the all processes behind the La Nina and the El Nino is. Okay, so let's start with the first question. The very first question says that you need to trace the reasons for the occurrence of most earthquake along the tectonic plate boundaries. Means we have to tell earthquake, the reasons behind the earthquake that happens along the tectonic plate boundaries. So the very first demand is this, and the second demand of the question is, why did the recent earthquake in Turkey become so devastating? So we have to quote some reasons behind Turkey earthquake devastation. So the question is asking about the two demands, then what you can introduce in your answer, how you can write the introduction. You can take the recent context that Turkey sits on the hotbed in the hotspot region of the earthquake or the seismic activity, that is Alpide belt, which is second most prone or the second largest area where the earthquake is concentrated after Circum-Pacific belt. This is the region where most of the earthquake occurs, and second the most earthquake occurs is in the Alpide belt. So this is the context you are setting. So you are also telling about earthquake behind and the earthquake in Turkey and also about the region of the Turkey earthquake. Or you can write some basic introduction that what are the earthquake. You can link it with the plate tectonic boundaries, then directly link with the Turkey earthquake. So earthquake is about the shaking of the earth. It is a natural process. It is caused due to the release of the energy, release of the pent up energy. And from where this energy has released, when the plates movement happens on the viscous molten magma, these lithospheric plates move, and this movement of the plate creates stress. This results into the creation of the faults, and along the faults or the fractures, these pent up energy got released from the earth's interior to the surface, and these waves, earthquake waves or the seismic waves, travel all along the earth. So this way also you can write the introduction. Then in the body part or before the body, after the introduction, you can make the world map, making the areas where the most earthquake occurs. The first one is the Circum-Pacific belt. The second area is about the Alpine or the Alpide Himalayan belt, and the third region is about the Mid-Atlantic ridge. So these are the three topmost region where the earthquake concentrates or the earthquake occurs. Then in the body part, you have to tell that why these earthquake happens or occurs along the tectonic plate boundaries. As we have discussed in the introduction itself, that the earthquakes are the release of energy or the shaking of the earth due to that release of energy, due to the pent up release of the energy. And how this energy got stored in the earth's interior? Because of the movement of the earth or the tectonic plates. And in what ways these plate movement happens is along the three major boundaries. The first is divergent, convergent and transform boundaries, and along these boundaries only these earthquake occurs. So the very first is about the divergent boundaries. When the two plates diverge from each other, it means there is a slab pull. It means the plates got faults and fractures. And these continental or the oceanic means lithospheric plates, these are not just very thin plates, these are approximately like 50 to 200 kilometers. And when these plates, lithospheric plates, crack, these faults and the fractures occurs along these plate boundaries, there is a massive release of energy from the Earth's interior, from the Earth's lithospheric plate only. So along the divergent boundaries, when the rift zones are created, when the mid-oceanic ridges are created, the earthquake occurs. You can quote some examples also along the mid-Atlantic region. Then comes the convergent boundaries, when the two plates collide with one another, and in the next case, when the heavier plate subducts below the lighter plate. And during the collision also, again, this collision creates the earthquake, and during the subduction, then along the volcanic eruption, earthquake happens. You can write some examples as in the case of earthquake in the Himalayan region, in the Caribbean region. Next is about the transform boundaries, when the two plates just past slide one another. So these create strike slip faults, and one plate pushes one another, slides one another. So these also creates earthquake. In all the cases, pent up energy or the release of the energy happens. Next is about the earthquake in the Turkey, why it was so devastating. The very first point is about the location of Turkey is such that it was so devastated. Means the location of Turkey is on the earthquake prone area only, is on the high seismic zones. We'll see where it is. So the location of the Turkey is such that whenever earthquake happens in that particular area, devastation has to happen. So let's see where the Turkey is located. See, this is Turkey, and it is along the North Anatolian fault. This is the Anatolian plate. This is Arabian plate. This is Aegean plate. This is African plate, and this is Eurasian plate. And the plate tectonics direction is such that this Arabian plate is moving Anatolian plate westwards. It means it is creating here transform fault. And this Turkey earthquake, majorly devastation happened along this line. Major habitation was along this line, and due to this transform boundary and the release of the pent-up energy and the movement of the plate along this East Anatolian fault creates or resulted into the most devastated earthquake. The next is about the magnitude and the intensity of the Turkey earthquake was such high, like 7.5 and 7.8. That is why it was so devastated. Next is about the geographical factor. This Turkey earthquake was shallow in nature, means the depth or the focus was shallow, and when the pent-up energy released from the very shallow depth, it is very huge in nature. So that is why it was so devastated. Next is about the geological composition. The geological composition of this particular area is such that the soils are very soft. So when the shaking of the earth happens, it results into the more devastation. The buildings collapses, more destruction to the communities as well as to the infrastructure happens. Next is about the lack of preparedness and the response. The Turkey earthquake timings was such that, and the unawareness about the Turkey earthquake results into the more devastation. It happens at that particular time that when no one was aware, people were sleeping at that particular time. So, and early warning system was not there, so there were the lack of preparedness, and the response system was such that it results into the massive devastation. Next is about That first earthquake has happened, then the secondary hazards that results due to the earthquake, like collapse of the buildings, that shaking of the earth surface, destruction of the infrastructure, that electronic and the electrical wires destruction happens, then secondary hazards due to the earthquake, that also results into the more devastation over that particular area. So these are some reasons of the devastation behind the Turkey earthquake. Next is what you can write in conclusion. We can write something way forward, that is more futuristic, and what we should take measures so as to reduce this destruction or devastation. Like we can put up a good technological advanced early warning system, and we have also should be aware and more surveillant about the land use planning. If we know that this particular area is more earthquake prone region and it is on the zone 5 or 4, whatever the region is, so we should avoid land use over there. We should avoid infrastructure building over that area. So these are some measures that can be take place, that can help in prevention of more devastation. And you can also write about Japanese or the Chilean model, about the code of the buildings, about how to build the infrastructure, how to resist the shocks of earthquake waves, like resistance bearing buildings. So we can take help from the other good practices or the best practices or the other models so as to take the maximum benefits in this area. Next, see the model answer. First, it is telling something about the plate tectonics, that earth is divided into multiple major and minor plate, and how the interaction results into the release of the energy, which are the seismic activities or the earthquake waves. Then the reasons, behind the Turkey earthquake. Finally, something about it's about the summary only. Now let's move on to the second question. The melting of the Thawid Glacier in the Antarctic region has raised concerns all over the world. So this is the context given in the question. Explain the impact of melting of ice caps and glaciers in the polar region and higher altitude. So the context is given that the Antarctic region, there are multiple glaciers. One known glacier is Thawid Glacier, and that is melting, and that raises concerns all over the world, that at what speed it is melting, it is raising the concerns. So this is about melting of glacier. And the major demand of the question is about impacts on polar region and melting of glaciers impact on higher altitude. So as this is a 10 marker question, so it is up to you whether to combine the melting of glaciers in the ice caps impact on polar and higher altitude region. You can merge it, or you can explicitly divide it into two parts and write in the two body parts, that impact on the polar region and impact in the higher altitude region, that if the melting of the glacier happens in these region, you can write it separately. So in introduction, what you can do, you can take this context about the Thawid Glacier. You can make some Antarctica map and quote the region where this Thawid Glacier is. So you can do that as well, and you can write something, the reasons behind why this Thawid Glacier is getting melted. The very first is about the climate change. Due to climate change, atmosphere is warming, oceans are warming, so temperatures increasing, so the glaciers are melting due to increase in temperature. Second is about the oceanic processes. There is a warm ocean current known as the circumpolar deep water. This is reaching the ground line of the Thawid Glacier, as we can see that. So this is retreating, or this results into the melting of the base or the ground line of the Thawid Glacier. Next is about the geographical factor. The shape of this Thawid Glacier is such that the trough is deep and narrow, and it allows the warm water to hit the ground line and helps in more and more melting. So that allows the warm water to flow beneath that particular glacier, making it particularly susceptible to the melting as compared to any other glacier in the region. So the shape of the Thawid glacier is such that the melting is exaggerated or is increasing at the greater speed. Next is about the feedback mechanism. Feedback mechanism is like the glaciers are melting, it is exposing more surface, darker surface, which results into the more heating of the surface, then again more glacier melting. So this is the feedback mechanism, that glaciers are retreating, exposing more surface, more that darker surface absorbs more heat, more accelerating or the melting of the glaciers retreat. So this is why Thawid glacier is melting at the exaggerated rate. So you can use some of the context in the introduction. Next, about the body, that impact of melting of the ice caps and the glaciers in the polar region. So the very first thing is, when the ice caps and the glaciers in the polar region melts, that it results into the increasing of the sea levels. And when the sea level increases, it results into the submergence of the coastal area, displacement of the human population and loss of habitat. So what you can do is, you can write geographical factors, socio-economic factors and the environmental factors, like rising sea level, geographical factors, surface, the submergence of the coastal areas, socio-economic, displacement of the human population, then environmental is loss of habitat and wildlife. Then climate change feedback loop. As we have discussed in the introduction itself, that the melting of the ice cap results into the more melting of the ice cap due to the feedback mechanism. Exposure of the more surface, again heating or absorption of the more heat due to the darker exposed surface, then again more glacial retreat or the glacier melting or the ice cap melting. Then these ice caps and the glacier melts, it disrupts the marine ecosystem, because these ice caps and the glaciers are made up of the fresh water, and when these fresh water got merged with the oceanic water, then salinity level will change, and there are certain species which survives in the particular salinity range, and when the salinity changes, it hampers their habitation. So altered salinity pattern, then habitation losses for the certain species of flora and fauna. Then next is polar bear and the penguins, their habitation is ice caps and the glaciers. When the glaciers are reduced in size, means a loss of habitat for the polar bears and the penguins. Then next is impact on the food chain and the potential extinction risks, as we have discussed, due to the changing in salinity level. When this glaciers will be melting and the ice caps will be melted, expose of the darker surface will happen, and along with that release of the thousands of microbes, and some scientists says that the next pandemic can happen due to the melting of glaciers only. So this can be the major cause of concern. Next is about the impact of the melting glacier in the higher altitude, like in the Himalayan region, etc. So first is water resources challenge. We are dependent on the glacier melt water in the drier seasons when the rainfall doesn't happen. So when these glacial retreats happen or the ice caps does melt or the glaciers melt, the sudden impact would be the floods, and the long term impact is reduced water supply. So you can divide it into long term and short term. Short term mein that floods will occur, long term drought situations can happen due to less availability of the fresh water. Then changes in the river system, altered flow pattern, volume impacting downstream communities and ecosystem, increased risk of floods, etc. we have discussed. Then loss of the natural landmarks, like retreat of the iconic glaciers affecting tourism and cultural heritage. So what we are doing in this, we are writing geographical impact, economic impact or the resources impact, like the water resources availability dependent on the agriculture, which will impact agriculture as well. Then socio-economic condition of the communities, that they'll have to get displaced due to the concerns of floods and droughts. Then environmental impact is about the loss of unique landscape and the scenic beauty. So this was the body. Finally, moving on to the conclusion. What we can write in the conclusion is how to avoid the melting of the glaciers and ice caps. As we all know that UNFCCC, Paris Agreement and the relevant proceedings with that, and the COPs on the various UNFCCC, we are limiting ourselves to increase in temperature range. So what we can write in the conclusion is UNFCCC international agreements, that how we have to do the international collaboration to work in this particular direction, or you can write some findings of the report that if this particular range of the temperature or the climate change will happen, then how it will impact the glacier melting and at what rate the glaciers will melt. Anything, whatever you find in the newspaper or the current affair, you can put it in the conclusion. So model answer, it's about something related to the fact related to the Thwaites Glacier, then melting, then impact, then measures to control. This is not explicitly asked, but you can still write it in your answer. Finally, conclusion. Let's move on to the next question. While La Nina is welcomed in India, El Nino triggers anxiety. Discuss. So the question is asking about the contrasting aspects of El Nino and La Nina, and we have to discuss it. So what you can write in the introduction, you can write this contrasting aspect only, that due to the contrasting effect or the impact of El Nino or La Nina on the India's climate makes La Nina generally more welcomed and El Nino results into the more anxiety. How? Because it has a different impacts on agriculture, water resources and temperature aspects. Like El Nino creates anxiety due to the concerns like reduced rainfall, droughts condition and its potential impact on economy, especially agricultural economy. Then moves on to the body part. This is just for your understanding. This is not required in the answer, or if you want it, you can write it in like some small box, that how El Nina, La Nina differs in their process. So let's understand what this process is. So this is equatorial Pacific Ocean, and in the general normal years, what happens is, this is the trade wind direction. This trade wind, which flows from east to west, it pushes the warm water westwards. So here warm water gets collected and results into the low pressure area, and here in the normal conditions, when this warm water pushes to the westward, it creates like high pressure or the colder region, and upwelling occurs in this particular area. So this is high pressure, this is low pressure, and the air is rising and making one cell which is submerging with high pressure, and this loops is getting completed. It means water is moving in this particular direction. This is a normal year. Now next comes to the El Nino year. In the El Nino years, suddenly trade winds weakens, and when this trade winds weaken, this does not pushes the warm water to the westwards. Instead, some counter equatorial current moves to the eastward direction, to the East Pacific Ocean. So here warm water gets collected and results into the low pressure over this region, and here some high pressure creates. So this is El Nino year when the eastern Pacific Ocean is warmer. And La Nina year is when the normal year is getting exaggerated or is accelerated, means the trade winds are more stronger now. It means more upwelling, and here more warm water gets collected in the larger area as well, and huge low pressure gets generated. So this is the basic concept behind the normal year, El Nino year and the La Nina year. Let's understand one more concept over here, that this is Australian region and here comes somewhere like South African continent, and here is like India, Tibetan Plateau. In the normal year, when this is the low pressure area, this warm air rises up, one limb gets connected to this high pressure area and this circle gets completed, this cell gets completed, and one limb of this low pressure, when this rises, here it's high pressure, then it's submerges near this masculine high, and this again completes one cell from here to here, and this again low pressure, here high pressure creates. And Indian monsoon is results when the one branch of this high pressure goes towards this Indian Tibetan low pressure area. So this is the monsoon belt. This is a normal year. When El Nino happen, this low pressure is not there or the very weakened, instead the high pressure is there. So this results into the weakened masculine high. This results into the weakened monsoon branch. So this is the major reason why that El Nino impacted monsoon. Due to its impact on the masculine high and resultant impact on the from high to low pressure area, this monsoon winds that flows, these gets weakened or sometime delayed onset, sometime very reduced rainfall. So this is the major background that why El Nino is bad for India. So this is the basic concept. Now we will see how this El Nino triggers anxiety and how this El Nino, La Nina is welcomed in India. So El Nino is negative for the monsoon and La Nina exaggerate or accelerate the monsoon. So that is why these are positives for India and these are negatives for India. So in body, we have to tell about how El Nino impacted India or impacts India in a negative way. The very first thing, weakening of the monsoon wind, as we have already seen, that decreased moisture transferred from the masculine high Indian Ocean and below average rainfall over the large part of India. Next is sometime it results into the delayed onset and the monsoon which happens also, it is for the shorter duration. So first is late arrival. It means for the duration, less duration only, the rainfall will happen over the Indian continent or the Indian subcontinent. The next is anomalous weather pattern. It can alter the atmospheric circulation pattern over the Indian Ocean as well. So it results into the changes into the weather pattern, increased frequency of heat waves, decreased cloud cover and suppressed convection, further contributed to the reduced rainfall. Next is it results into the drought-like condition, reduced rainfall, altered atmospheric condition, drought conditions in the several part of India. Then it results or it impacts. Now we know that this El Nino negatively impacts India due to the weakening of the monsoon, due to the delayed onset of the monsoon and due to the shorter duration of the monsoon in India. But it impacts only monsoon. That how it impacts whole of the India, because 60% of our agriculture is the rain-fed agriculture and people dependent on the agriculture are huge. So due to weakening of the monsoon, it results into the increasing, or when the El Nino is there, it results into the increase in temperature. which is negative for the human when there are the high temperatures for the longer period of time. Then second is when the precipitation is less due to the weakening of the monsoon, water availability is less, water resources availability will be less, and the agriculture that is dependent on that water, that will not survive. So these are some conditions, that is why El Nino creates anxiety in India. Then why La Nina? Negatives or the contrasting part of this El Nino: enhanced monsoon winds, early onset and for the extended duration, increased rainfall intensity, so which is beneficial for some region. Then positive agriculture impact, crop growth, enhanced soil moisture, improve water availability for irrigation, etc. That results into the improved agricultural efficiency and productivity, and hence benefiting the farmers and the whole community of India. So this is the major body part. Finally, conclusion, what we can write is, we can write something in the summary or the way forward process, like these are the processes which are variable in nature, that we cannot depend upon these vagaries of the nature, because due to the climate change and El Nino impact, this creates a huge negative impact on India. So what we can do is, we can take something measures like early monitoring of the climate pattern, so that we can prepare ourselves that in this particular year this climatic conditions would prevail, so we have to take measures according to that. Next is provide early warning system, so that the farmers and the other stakeholders will make some informed decisions. Next is water management strategies should be there, so that our Indian farmers, our Indian people, they are not dependent just on the rainfall. Then crop diversification, you can also write like climate smart agriculture should be promoted, other technological advancements or the sensor based farming should be there, and other adaptation measures are promoted to reduce the vulnerability of the agriculture sector to the El Nino induced droughts. So this way our third question is also over. Let's see the model answer. You can also make some diagram related to normal year, El Nino year, La Nina year, then writing the two main body parts, La Nina and El Nino, how one is welcomed and another creates anxiety. Finally, something related to summary. So that is it for today. Thank you and have a nice day, and keep writing.